I guess for us, what we do see is that in 2022 was a year of cascading liquidations. So with Three Arrows Capital and thereafter Celsius, and more recently in November, December Q4 with FTX. So what we do see is that credit risk has been something that the industry has not really been prioritizing. And over here at Cake DeFi, I think we view credit risk very important right on the onset. Even before this becomes a requirement, our founders really had that foresight to decide that, okay, we need to look at risk management robustly, not because it's a requirement by the regulations, but it's because it's for best practice and it allows the business to be sustainable in the long run. So what we do see from a credit risk perspective is really understanding that for the crypto industry, perhaps credit risk, it's sort of defined in it, or not rather defined in it, but it faces specific challenges that may not be the case in the more TradFi space. Because firstly, the counterparties that you work with tend to be smaller. And they tend, as a result of being smaller, they tend to work with regulators or auditors that may be regulators which may not regulate them, and auditors which are way smaller in size. Unlike what we're used to in the TradFi space, of the big four auditors, etc. So with that, it brings enhanced credit risk, because how then do this financial statements sort of square up when we do that financial analysis? So I think there's that aspect which makes that credit risk element tough. But over at Cake DeFi, I think what we do look for is really, do we really understand the business group? Because it's not just the counterparty that contracts with us, but what about the group of that counterparty, and how does that bring in terms of a credit risk perspective? So that's where employing the best practices in credit risk modeling, in terms of how do we sort of assess the counterparty credit risk as a group, and do we understand really the business around it? During the panel, we talk about how culture, how conduct is important. That's also important from a credit risk perspective, going beyond just the documents that you see, but also really understanding the business and the realities behind it. So I think for Cake DeFi, we are a centralized, decentralized finance platform. So basically, we form the bridge between the CeFi space and the DeFi space. So in a way, it provides the best of both worlds. One, from the DeFi space, we bring in the transparency that it's out there for the DeFi ecosystem, where everything is on the chain itself. On the centralized party, what we do bring in is accountability. Because from a regulator perspective, how the way for regulations that took place during the DeFi in terms of the TradFi space, and likewise their perspective in shaping the regulation for crypto assets has been on how do we ensure accountability, how do we ensure robust risk management vis-a-vis a decentralized world where no one is in charge, right? So for us as a CeDeFi, I think how we view this is that with this increased regulatory type of landscape guidance, expectation, requirements, etc., there will definitely come in the strong business models that we talk about, like custodians, how robust these custodians are, such that are they able, and also not just in terms of the resilience, but also in terms of the number of tokens that they can offer, in terms of the robustness of that custodian ecosystem, in terms of the prime brokerages, where then be it trading firms or parties can then trust each other again, rather than, I guess it's a transition from industry sectorial weakness, enhanced credit risk environment, to one where counterparties can then trust each other. And that's where eventually adoption will go from an institutional perspective. And with institutional adoption, I think that's where the market will really mature as an industry. So going forward, I guess in 2023, one thing that is definitely sort of shining up is in terms of regulatory development. So we do see that with FTX, focus in terms of customer protection comes to the forefront. And I think that's good for the industry, because overall as an industry, without it being regulated, it brings sort of a low level of trust from an institution perspective. With regulations come required robust risk management. And as a result of that, definitely it will drive in key, I guess, market players in the ecosystem, be it your custodians, be it your prime brokerages. And this is good overall for the ecosystem, for it to mature beyond from a nascent stage to one that can eventually provide value to its users. So I guess from a risk management perspective, what we do see based on the public announcements and what we see on the media is that there seems to be, unfortunately, an absence of credit risk management in these firms. And likewise, I think that would definitely be an area where be it your counterparties, be it your investors, those will be areas where they'll dive deeper into in terms of how do you actually view, assess, manage this risk. And I think that's good from an overall perspective, from a regulatory perspective, which is the key in 2023 as we see MiCA eventually being rolled out, and more recently, especially we see the VARA as well as the announcement from the in terms of the Hong Kong regulatory landscape. So we do expect that there will be clearer guidance, and I think that's definitely very helpful. In Singapore, in October, we see the consultation memo, of which we would expect a greater focus in terms of safeguarding of our customer assets, in terms of stablecoin management. I think that overall brings that value to the ecosystem, and how this leads for the business, how it leads to for the institution in terms of the implications would then be that definitely greater emphasis we put on it, greater focus, be it from risk management or from internal control perspective, for these parts of the businesses.